Hi, I'm Dr. Paula Koger. I know I waver back and forth between wanting to give up the title doctor and just practice under my minister's license and the Pastoral Ministerial Association's contract that is formed between the doctor or the pastor and the patient, which says that the patient is the doctor, basically responsible for themselves, and I call that being the doctor. Hippocrates said the doctor's job is to help the patient become their doctor. And, well, it makes more sense to me than anything else, because after 74 years of being a doctor, because I was born being a doctor, helping people, taking on their troubles and trying to fix everybody, it has been a good journey, and I've learned a lot. But the most important thing I've learned is that people are at the effect of their healthcare system. They depend on the doctor to get them well. Consequently, very few people get very well because it's not the doctor's job, or it's not really possible. The doctor can offer fabulous things, and some of them better than others. Many of them in alternative medicine field, natural medicine field, are effective in augmenting what the patient does. I saw a man for cataracts, and I gave him some drops for the cataracts, a nasal spray to clear his sinus area and the congestion around his face, neck, so that he could get good drainage. I gave him something to support his liver because he was not methylating. And the next day I saw him and he said, "Not much better." I go, "Did you take the drops?" "Not yet." Well, it's not just taking what you're given that matters. It's what you think. It's what you feel. How much you love yourself. Because without the action of the heart, moving the blood in a positive way, the energy doesn't flow. Now, so here's what we're up against in actually healing. We'll call it moving the energy. First of all, the understanding of moving the energy is limited because we are a society that has most people have very limited awareness that we are an energy field. Everything's energy. Einstein. I don't know if you're a fan, but I felt he had it right. And so if everything in our body is energy, the process of getting the energy flowing is the challenge. That's why they recommend exercise, breathing. We recommend it. Eating light, leaving out sugar, and ice cream. Sorry. You want to be well? I recently had a patient who started eating ice cream, and he went to his doctors and he said they had to do surgery immediately. Well, I did, with the help of his chiropractor, demonstrate to him that if he simply fasted and cleaned out his artery, he would not have to have immediate surgery, and he is very, very well after 3 weeks on a juice fast with some things added. But he's happier. And he's proud of himself. And he knows his power now. He knows what he can do. What about you? But the unblocking of energy, although fasting is a wonderful way to do it, juice fasting is enormously beneficial. Exercise is enormously beneficial. Positive thinking is enormously beneficial. Many times we have things that are stuck, like toxins that are stuck. Now, why do they get stuck? That's what you have to learn about if you want to be all the way happy and well. Why do they get stuck? They get stuck because, well, you can imagine energy flows along energy transmitting systems in the body, like nerve impulses, like cellular communication, like blood flow. And if these systems are blocked, then it can't get past that block without a jolt. That's why we use acupuncture, biofeedback, cupping, massage, Jinshin Jitsu, lots of things to move it. And when we move it, we have to remove what's blocking. Now, it's pretty easy to remove toxins. When toxins are blocking, like aluminum, it's not real easy all of the time, but it is easier than removing the generational traumas and patterns. And those generational traumas and patterns are the most challenging for one reason. It's almost impossible to convince someone they have them and to help them participate in letting go of their generational challenges. Well, it's an ongoing process to release all these challenges because our generational patterns have been building up for many generations. Now, that's a statement that most people would disagree with. But even if you are strictly believing, as the Bible says, it says many of the sins are rained upon the generations. So there's evidence of the buildup. And it's not always sitting down and going, I forgive myself, or I forgive you, or it isn't always effective. We have to have a way of assessing whether or not the release is effective. Well, it's simple. Kinesiology is a technique that is very effective in determining what is good and what is not good, what is working and what is not working. A friend of mine was recently, he's had 3 or 4 strokes and other such disturbances. And he went into the doctor and they gave him a shingles shot. And he proceeded to vomit and get very, very sick. Because there was no assessment as to whether or not a shingles shot would be tolerated by this body, especially after multiple surgeries, strokes, and etc. So kinesiology, I studied when I was working for the government as a nurse in Europe, nurse in the schools with the kids of military. And kinesiology is widely used to determine whether or not something will make the body stronger or weaker, whether or not it's a yes, good, or a no, don't do it. So we're constantly just kind of looking for things that can do it like that. However, our needs change. Our tolerances change. And so the body's preferences change. So it becomes our job to learn to tune into and listen to ourselves and whether or not something is good for us. I have taught people to do kinesiology for themselves, and at the same time, I have found it a difficult thing to become accurate with testing yourself. It's a good thing to learn to fine-tune and listen to your inner heart and your gut as to whether or not things are good or not for you. The problem with that is that we are accustomed to being told what to do. So when our physician tells us what to do, and we believe in that particular branch of medicine and that particular person, we don't ask ourselves. We simply do it. Yeah, that's what we do. Consequently, we have a lot of people dying because what was told them was ultimately not something their body could tolerate. So I think about that song, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them and know when to walk away, know when to run. I think it's very challenging in this culture, in this world, to survive other people telling us what is good for us and what to do, and other people assessing us and telling us whether or not we are good at something, not good at something. It destroys our belief system and our trust in ourselves when somebody tells us we're not good at this or that. I think it's up to us to decide what we're good at, to tune into what we're good at, to know what we're good at. And I also think it's up to us to support the good we see in people, the positive we see in people. Now, if they're running away with dangerous stuff, doing dangerous stuff, and you can obviously see it and they're about ready to trip and fall, I think that's the time to say, look at this. Is this the right thing for you? It's important that we learn to see for ourselves what's good for us. Case in point, this picture behind me, which is one of my favorite things in the world, was painted by my brother-in-law, Gary. Gary was a pharmacist, and Gary is not alive on this earth now. He has passed on. And when he was painting the series of paintings that he was painting, his art teacher told him he wasn't an artist. Now, he loved to paint, and it was his expression of who he really was. And for somebody to tell you that your expression of who you really are is not what you are supposed to express is a crime in my book. It's very sad how readily we put down others. It's very sad for me how many times I've been put down for being different than others, having a different opinion. The fact is, everybody does have a different opinion. And very few people know what their opinion is, and they look to other people for opinions and quickly and readily adopt them for themselves. Yes, the biggest challenge we face is finding our own identity, our own soul, our own light, our own love, our own self within. And so Hippocrates saying the physician's job is to help the patient find the doctor within. That's it. Because the doctor within is a healing doctor. Because if you find the doctor within, it means you've found your love. And love heals all. But finding your love is the challenge. Now, I personally came from a family where I was beaten. I came from an environment where I was molested. I came from a social culture where I was negated. Even though I was president of the class, president of MYF, president of the main organizations, I did not really receive the kind of appreciation and love that the people who were cheerleaders did. Now I find it funny. Yes. However, we are in a culture who does not promote individualism. People are sitting in their doctor's office all day waiting for an opinion, waiting for a pill to solve their problems. Of course, there are a growing number of people sitting in a yoga position listening to their inner self or listening to music that inspires their connection to their inner self, or walking and listening to music that allows them to quiet the outside and tune into the inside. Because as we're trying to find the inside and we get too many chatterboxes out there chatting us up, it's difficult to hear ourselves and tune them out and not have their energy behind their chatter come into us and affect us. I listened to a chatterbox for quite a while. Yesterday, and I was kind of exercising my ability to be compassionate to what's going on and what drives somebody to never stop chattering. And this was a person who didn't want an anti-chatter session. She didn't want to heal what was causing the constant chatter since childhood. So I listened without saying much. Minimal intervention until she said, "As we grow old." And I said, "Would you leave me out of that we? I don't want to be labeled as a person growing old. Okay. I want to be labeled as a person who's growing more vibrant and alive every day." As a result of listening to that chatter, I had a nightmare for the first time in, I think, since childhood. So I have to listen to my inner guidance that says, no more listening to chatter with people who don't want to solve the issue behind the chatter. Now you say, well, how does that work, solving an issue behind the chatter? I like that question, and it's essentially a great question. First of all, I would do my biofeedback scanning, which you can see on my website, www.wealthofhealthcenter.com. And then I would look at the results because it tells me what issues are stored in the subconscious. Energetic, remember, everything is energetic. If it's energetic, it can be measured. Energy can be translated into words, like a virus has a certain energy. A spirochete has a certain energy, and thoughts and patterns that are stored in our subconscious have energy. Now maybe that's a hard one to digest. let's say, for example, we take this chatterbox and we say, when did this chattering issue start? And I would use kinesiology, which basically measures the strength of the arm while it's being held out like this, straight, with the fist folded. I would test the pressure of the arm, and I would test, was this a trauma in this lifetime? If it's not strong, it's a no. Is this a trauma in another lifetime? If it's not strong, it's a no. Is this a generational pattern trauma? If it's strong, it's a yes. If it's not, it's a no. Then I would ask, what side of the family does this generational trauma come from? The mother or the father? Which grandparent? How many generations ago? And then I would simply ask them to do a voice printing session, speaking into the computer microphone with their hand on the handset, which I will show you in another video. And as they talk into the computer, because it also measures frequencies and has silicon dioxide to store frequencies and transmits frequencies, it sends back a balanced frequency through the hand into the body and helps the person whose intent is to release the trauma, the pattern. So say it's 16 generations ago, it would go like this. My grandfather 16 generations ago was a very anxious man because he was given so much responsibility for saving the world, and he was overwhelmed by it and very frightened, and stored this fear and trauma in his brain and could not stop talking in an effort to solve the problem, or whatever the scenario is. And as the person's talking, what happens as they clear the issue is it becomes apparent what was there, why they can't stop talking, why they can't let go of things. And in the process of discovering why we can't let go, the computer assists us with energy that can help us let go. We breathe, we relax, and we let go. Now, when that chatterbox trauma is gone, typically there is a sense of great release. Of course. But this chatterbox habit, way of coping, way of releasing tensions, way of giving others our troubles, our energy field, being infectious, whatever we're tuning into is what we're communicating to others. Ah, yes. So this person actually couldn't figure out why a person who was going to move in with her died. Suddenly, unexpectedly. A person who had come down to help out in a family crisis. Now we have to face facts that what we don't finish in us, what we don't handle in us, what we give wonderful, loving people around us to handle can kill them. Our children are affected. And when we release it, they are released. And the past generations are released. I studied with Bert Hellinger, a PhD psychologist from Europe, German, constellation therapy. And what the constellation therapy did is demonstrate to me so clearly what facing these unfaced facts, unfaced, unknown situations could do for us. I actually have a background of being a psychiatric nurse professor and working in a psychiatric nursing ward. And I was sitting at this conference in Miami beside a girl who was psychotic. And when she got up on the stage, she found out that 9 generations ago, there had been a murder in her family, which is often the case with psychotic schizophrenic people, that there has been a murder that has not ever been revealed. And in Bert Hellinger's brilliant work, thank you, Bert, she observed this. In fact, Bert had someone else stand in for her as she observed. And when she did recognize this, are you ready for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? She completely normalized. I witnessed it with my own eyes, and it certainly was a great learning experience. It convinced me the power of letting go of these unknown, buried family secrets. So I took that constellation therapy experience and my master's in counseling training and my PhD work, and I put it all together, and now I use it as voice printing. Because it's a little bit more demonstratable. When you've released it, it actually has a little sign that pops up on the screen that says released. I like to get measurable results. Now, this voice printing technology is NASA technology. Yes. Calvin Young, a NASA engineer. Thank you, Calvin, for giving us this great gift. And thank you, NASA, for allowing brilliant people like Calvin to develop brilliant instruments to help mankind. Isn't that what NASA is there for? To help us, help ourselves? Well, why not? So in this world called alternative medicine, I really don't think it's alternative. I think it's the only medicine. Of course, I grew up on a farm with a grandmother, Bessie, and we never saw a doctor because there wasn't one. And she figured it out. She did what it took, and we did what it took. And mostly what we did, we prayed. There wasn't anything prayer couldn't heal. And we've all gotten away from knowing that, from knowing how to pray, what to pray for, and believing that prayer heals all. So one thing I identify in the sessions with patients is what to pray for. How to pray, how to release, how to let go, how to open up to let the source in. So it makes sense. If we're an energy field, our main job is to stay plugged into the source of all energy. When we are disconnected from our source and the source can't get in, we can't heal, no matter what we're taking. So that becomes a priority for healing, is staying connected to our higher self. Now, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland and the medulla oblongata are entrance points for the spirit to come in to heal us. And so a big part of healing is learning how to know if we're connected and to feel in our heart the connection. Because the heart, being the energy pump, has to be open and working well to be able to pump the messages. Now, the liver has to be working well to remove the debris that has accumulated and does accumulated from food and drink and inhaled toxins and whatever. And on the left, it's the spleen that has to have enough energy. And when we live in this world, we tend to worry and weaken the spleen rather than trusting and opening and believing and relaxing. We're trained to be tense and worry. And the kidneys get in there and they get afraid, and so we have a weakness in our body. And every organ depends on each other. They're a family. If the kidneys are weak, we don't have enough strength to do all these other things. If the spleen is weak, the liver can't pump it out. The heart can't pump well. If the lungs are blocked, we're not getting enough air to support the system. And if we're not drinking enough water, we're not getting enough fluid to move everything out. Would you try to drive a car without gas? That's what most people are doing. Their bodies aren't operating like the fine-tuned machinery they were made to be. So an interesting thing about biofeedback equipment to measure these weaknesses is that it can be done in half an hour. It's included in the cost of the session. No added lab work, no radiation, just your hand on a handset and the practitioner pushing the right buttons to assess thyroid function, pituitary function, hypothalamus function, adrenal function, ovarian function, testicular function, pericardium, diaphragm, brain. What do you want? You can dial it in. Now, it doesn't get much simpler than this. However, it does get harder to believe. The simpler it gets, when we've grown up in a society that's made it very profitable and very challenging and very difficult to get enough tests to find the problem, which is often never found. When I was 6, I was in a household that was disturbed. My mother had left my father. My sister was very unhappy. I was very unhappy. My grandparents were beating us, beating me especially. I was the oldest. And I was hurting emotionally, and there was no solution. We went to church and prayed, but there was no way out of my pain. So I told my family that I had a pain in my right side, a bad pain. Oh, yeah. So they took me to a chiropractor who examined me and sent me to an MD who said I had appendicitis and took me to surgery right away. Well, guess what? He took my appendix out. He showed up at my bedside and said, "It's a good thing we did that. Your appendix was wrapped around your intestines and you could have died." Thing is, my side didn't hurt. I simply wanted to get attention. I saw everybody else going into surgeries and getting sick to get attention, and I wanted my fair share. When the doctor stood at the end of my bed telling me that he had saved my life by taking it out, he was such a noble-looking, honest man, it was hard to believe that he was protecting his license and his name, because it wasn't true. At 6 years old, I knew that it wasn't true. There was nothing wrong with me. Now, there was plenty wrong with me after the surgery because the scar blocked my intestinal flow. And the energy channels that I later discovered in my acupuncture training that go down the body were blocked. It caused complications in many areas of my body, like bladder and large intestine, and since one thing affects the other. But the nice thing about it is, my uncle gave me a beautiful robe, one of those chenille robes. I'd always wanted one. And they gave me love. So I have to ask myself, what do we do for love? What do you do for love? And later I found out that you could simply ask for it. You could simply say, would you give me a hug? Would you give me some love and appreciation? Now, granted, it's new for people to hear that, and you get different reactions. But most of the time, it pays off, and it's a lot less painful than getting cut open. So part of being a good doctor is teaching people how to communicate their desires and their feelings in such a way that people are happy to participate in giving them what they want, and will, in fact, learn about asking for what they want. I hope you can understand a bit more about what I do. I'm going to keep talking. I'm never giving up.